A wedding day supposed to be the most beautiful moment in a woman's life. Music playing, roses lining the aisle, every gaze filled with blessings. But what if, on that very day, before the gown even touches the ground, you uncover the cruelest betrayal? Today's story is about Clara, a woman who thought she was about to touch happiness, only to be stabbed in the back by the two people she trusted most, her perfect fiancé and her childhood best friend. From a wedding turned into a day of reckoning, Clara was forced to rise, to confront, and to choose herself. If you believe that true happiness doesn't come from being chosen by someone else, but from having the courage to choose yourself, then stay with Snail's story and listen to this journey. And don't forget to like and subscribe, so you won't miss more stories to come. Clara Reynolds had grown so accustomed to the smell of disinfectant that sometimes it even slipped into her dreams. At 28, a dedicated pediatric nurse in the city hospital, Clara often returned home late at night with aching hands and shadowed eyes. Yet after every long shift, the moment she heard the voice of her fiancé, Ethan Harrington, over the phone, the exhaustion seemed to melt away. Ethan belonged to an entirely different world. The only son of the Harrington family, the owners of the largest real estate empire in Millbrook, he was tall, refined, with a gaze that could cut through anyone, and a smile so warm it startled people with its contrast. To Clara, he felt like something far beyond her reach. They had met at a charity gala for the hospital. He was the donor, she the volunteer nurse working backstage. When Ethan initiated a conversation, Clara thought it was nothing more than polite courtesy. No one, not even her, could have imagined that 2 years later he would be kneeling under the streetlights, holding out a diamond ring that glittered like a quiet promise. The entire town of Millbrook saw them as the golden couple. "You're so lucky, Clara," the mothers at the hospital often said with admiration in their eyes. "Ethan Harrington is a rare treasure." Clara would simply smile, her fingers brushing the ring he had given her, a diamond bright enough to shine, yet modest enough to feel sincere. For her, happiness was simple: a meaningful job, a man who loved her, and a future waiting ahead. The one who shared every moment of this journey was Vanessa Brooks, Clara's childhood best friend, and now her maid of honor. Vanessa was Clara's opposite: glossy black hair, a stylish wardrobe, and the kind of confident stride that turned men's heads. Yet beneath that dazzling surface, she was still the same girl who once stayed by Clara's side all night when her mother underwent heart surgery, the one who shielded her from bullies in middle school. "Without you, I'd never have made it this far," Clara once admitted during a late-night wine session in her tiny apartment. Vanessa had laughed. "Just wait for your wedding. I'll prove I'm the best maid of honor you could ever have." And she did. From the day Ethan proposed, Vanessa poured her heart into every detail, shopping for flowers, sampling cakes, even staying up late to handwrite every invitation in a calligraphy so perfect that Clara joked people would mistake her for a professional secretary. "You deserve the most beautiful wedding," Vanessa would say, her eyes gleaming with conviction. Clara's family was overflowing with joy. Her modest, hard-working parents wept at the thought of their daughter marrying into such a prestigious household. Her younger brother Matthew teased endlessly, "If you become a Harrington bride, does that make me some sort of junior aristocrat?" But the words that touched Clara most belonged to her late grandmother, who had once warned her, "Marriage isn't about the day you wear the white dress. It's about all the days that come after. Make sure he chooses you every day, even when the glitter fades." Clara carried those words deep in her heart, and whenever she looked at Ethan, she believed her grandmother had been right. The wedding day drew near. Riverside Manor, the grand Riverside estate, had been reserved for the ceremony. Draped in white flowers and candlelight, it looked like something pulled from the screen of a romantic film. Clara slipped into her gown for the final fitting. lace dress with long sleeves that hugged her slender figure, and for the first time, she truly saw herself as the dream bride. Staring into the mirror, cheeks flushed and heart racing, she believed happiness was only just beginning. Yet, behind the glow of satin and candlelight, shadows lingered. Ethan had grown increasingly busy with projects, often coming home late. Sometimes his phone would buzz after midnight, the screen flashing with a letter V. Clara once asked, and he had laughed it off. Just a colleague. New project, urgent meetings. She wanted to believe him, and she did. Because belief was the only foundation a simple nurse could cling to while standing. Beside a man like Ethan Harrington. Vanessa, too, occasionally vanished without explanation. Just dates, she answered casually when Clara probed. Clara had smiled, imagining her best friend finding her own dream man soon enough. Not once did she consider that these scattered pieces might one day connect into the most brutal picture of her life. On the night before the wedding, Clara lay in her childhood bedroom at her parents' house. Moonlight spilled through the window, gentle as an embrace. She clutched her phone, rereading Ethan's latest message. "Tomorrow, you'll be my wife. I promise, nothing can change that." Clara smiled softly, closed her eyes, and let sleep take her. Her heart, innocent and trusting, had no idea that within mere hours, her entire world would collapse. That promise would pierce her like the sharpest blade. On Saturday morning, the Reynolds household overflowed with the sounds and scents of happiness. Mary, Clara's mother, was in the kitchen baking her traditional apple pie, humming old melodies under her breath, while Paul, her father, stood in front of the mirror rehearsing his father of the bride speech. His voice cracked here and there, but his eyes glimmered with pride. Matthew, Clara's 24-year-old brother, busied himself arranging flowers and teasing, "When you move into the Harrington mansion, don't forget about your poor little brother, okay?" Clara only laughed, playfully tapping him on the head. Everyone believed she was about to step into a marital paradise. No. One suspected that beneath the glossy surface lay fractures deep and unseen. Vanessa arrived in a fitted sapphire dress, her hair swept into a flawless bun. She carried a box of pastries from the city's most exclusive bakery, setting it on the counter with a flourish. "Clara, tomorrow you'll be the most radiant bride in all of Millbrook. I've already finalized the seating for the groom's side. Don't worry, not a single detail escapes me." Mary smiled warmly, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Vanessa, you're like a second daughter to me." The words wrapped Clara's heart in warmth. From childhood, Vanessa had been like family. She was there at every milestone: graduation, birthdays, even the night Ethan proposed. Clara never questioned it. She trusted Vanessa as naturally as she trusted her own breath. That afternoon, the family drove to Riverside Manor for one last inspection. The old estate gleamed on the riverbank, its reflection shimmering in the golden sunlight. Workers were finishing the archway of white flowers. Musicians tuned their instruments, and soft notes drifted through the sprawling garden. Clara paused, imagining herself walking down the petal-strewn aisle toward Ethan. Her heart swelled so much it hurt. Ethan was there too, speaking briskly with the event manager. When he saw Clara, he walked over and kissed her forehead. The scent of his expensive cologne lingered, his eyes briefly shadowed with weariness before melting into a tender smile. "Tomorrow, you'll officially be mine. I can't wait any longer." Clara blushed, not noticing the fleeting tension in his eyes. The tension Vanessa, standing only a few steps away, caught all too clearly. By evening, guests began arriving in Millbrook from all directions. Luxury cars lined up outside the Central Hotel. The Harringtons handled the grand receptions, while the Reynoldses, though modest, prepared homemade dishes and local wine for old friends. The town buzzed like a festival, and yet, amid the joy, a small crack appeared in the glass. When Clara stepped into the hotel corridor, she spotted Ethan tucked into a corner, speaking urgently on the phone. His voice was low, rushed, but she caught fragments. "Tomorrow, don't worry, I'll take care of it," Art stuttered. As she approached, Ethan startled, quickly pocketing his phone. He smiled, wrapping his arms around her. "Just talking to a business partner about a project. Don't overthink it." Clara nodded, telling herself she was being paranoid. Still, the flicker in his eyes haunted her long after. That night, following tradition, Clara slept in her childhood bedroom at her parents' home. The little room, with its faded pink curtains and old wooden bed, had witnessed countless girlhood dreams. Mary slipped quietly inside, sitting on the edge of the bed, gently stroking her daughter's hair. "Clara, I know you're stepping into a new life. Remember, marriage isn't just roses. There will be dark days. What matters is whether that man chooses to stay by your side." Clara smiled, kissing her mother's hand. "I believe Ethan will always choose me." In the hallway, Matthew overheard and smirked. "Ethan's a little too perfect, almost suspicious," he'd teased before. Clara brushed it aside. For her, trust in Ethan was unshakable. At midnight, Clara lay on her side and sent Ethan a message. "Good night." His reply came. Almost instantly, "Sleep well, future wife. Tomorrow is the beginning of us." Clara closed her eyes, cradling dreams of a dazzling future. She had no idea that what awaited her was not a beginning at all, but a collapse so carefully orchestrated that no one saw it coming. The morning of June 15th dawned bright over Millbrook. The summer breeze carried the scent of damp grass from the riverbank, as if nature itself was conspiring to make Clara Reynolds' wedding day perfect. In the small bedroom where she had grown up, Clara opened her eyes to sunlight streaming through faded curtains. She was no longer the girl who once taped pop star posters to the walls and scribbled secrets in pencil diaries. She was a bride, about to step into marriage. Her heart raced wildly. The entire house buzzed with unusual energy, her mother clattering in the kitchen, her father talking briskly on the phone with the event staff, Matthew belting out songs under the shower. Her phone vibrated on the nightstand. The first message was from Ethan. "Good morning, love. Today you'll be my wife. I still can't believe how lucky I am." Clara smiled, her fingers trembling as she typed back, "Me too. See you at the altar, my love." Moments later, the screen lit up again. "Vanessa, Clara, it's your day. I'm at the salon now, coming soon to help. Get ready, we're going to leave the whole town in awe." Clara's nerves softened. Everything felt under control, like a play rehearsed 1,000 times at precisely 10 o'clock. The makeup team and photographers arrived. The living room turned into a backstage studio. The wedding gown hung on its rack, lace spilling down in waves, catching the light like a halo. Clara sat before the mirror as expert hands traced eyeliner, brushed blush, and dusted powder. "She looks like a princess," the photographer murmured, clicking away. Mary's eyes brimmed with tears. "My daughter, you're so beautiful." Clara laughed through the reflection, giddy and shy. Vanessa swept in last, a soft breeze carrying her sweet perfume. Her dark hair was pulled into a sleek bun, her navy bridesmaid dress hugging her elegant frame. She studied Clara from head to toe, then pulled her into a fierce embrace. "You're every girl's dream bride. Ethan's going to lose his breath when he sees you." Clara hugged her back, warmed to the core, never noticing the flicker of something darker in Vanessa's eyes. Gone as quickly as it appeared. By noon, the bridal cars pulled away from the Reynolds home. Riverside Manor emerged like a fairy tale painting, a white floral arch, satin-draped chairs, and a lavish tent rising in the distance. Guests in polished attire filled the garden, laughter mingling with the songs of summer birds. Clara stepped into the bridal suite of the manor, drifting as though inside a dream. At 1 o'clock, with only an hour left, she reapplied a soft layer of lipstick while Vanessa slipped away, saying she had to check on the flowers and the band. At 1:30, Clara's phone rang. It was Linda, the event manager, her voice carefully measured. "Clara, just a small hiccup. Ethan's running a little late. Probably tied up with something. Don't worry, everything's under control." Clara's heart dipped. Ethan late. That had never happened before. He was known for punctuality, once even teasing her about her habit of arriving late to dates. She forced a calm breath. Men get cold feet too, she told herself. By 1:45, Vanessa still hadn't returned. Clara began to fidget. She called her no answer. A vague unease stirred inside her chest. 2 o'clock, the official start time. Linda called again, this time, her voice shaking. "Clara, I'm so sorry, but Ethan hasn't arrived. We can't reach him. His phone's off." It was as if all the blood drained from Clara's body. In the mirror, the flawless bride's face turned ghostly pale. She clutched her phone, her mother and brother's voices pounding at the door. Memories crashed over her. Ethan's secretive calls, the late nights, the mysterious V flashing on his phone, and now, Vanessa's sudden disappearance. Clara surged to her feet, the long train of her gown sweeping the tiled floor. Her voice cracked, but her words were steady. "We have to find him, right now." Outside the window, sunlight still dazzled. Laughter still floated in the garden, as though the world remained oblivious in its joy. But for Clara, the sky had already fractured. A chilling premonition gripped her. Whatever lay beyond that door was about to shatter everything she believed in. The air inside the bridal suite grew unbearably heavy. Clara paced back and forth, her trembling hands unable to keep still, while her mother, Mary, tried to mask her panic by pouring glass after glass of water that she herself couldn't swallow. Matthew, hot-tempered as ever, slammed his fist on the vanity so hard a tube of lipstick rolled to the floor. "Something's wrong. Clara, I'm going to find Ethan right now." "Wait." Clara stopped him, her voice breaking. He would never just disappear like this. His phone's off, he's going on, so is Vanessa. That's not a coincidence. Her words froze the room. Two names etched deepest in her heart. Her fiancé and her best friend vanished at the same time on her wedding day. The coincidence was too perfect not to reek of suspicion. Mary placed a trembling hand on her daughter's shoulder, eyes rimmed red. "Clara, breathe. Maybe they just ran into some trouble on the way," but even she didn't believe her own words. Clara yanked up the hem of her long wedding gown and strode toward the door. Linda, the event manager, rushed after her in alarm. "Miss Reynolds, please, don't go outside. The guests are waiting, they'll see you." "I don't care," Clara snapped, eyes blazing. "If my groom is here, I'll see him with my own eyes. If not, I need to know where he is." Matthew and their father quickly joined her. They led Clara through the bewildered stares of staff. Whispers began rippling across the garden. "What's happening? Where's the bride going?" The Reynolds' old car sped down the road toward town. Clara sat in the back, her gown billowing across the seat, fists crushing her phone as if she could wring truth from it. Each time the screen lit up only to flash no connection, her heart sank deeper into the abyss. What about Vanessa? Matthew growled. "Try calling her." Clara dialed. A cold automated voice answered. "The number you have dialed is currently unavailable." Her body turned to ice. The scattered fragments, the late nights, the secretive calls. The midnight V flashing on Ethan's phone all began snapping together into one horrific picture. "The Millbrook Inn," Clara said suddenly, her tone sharp as a blade. "Ethan stayed there last night. We're going there." The car turned onto a cobblestone drive leading to the ivy-clad hotel. Inside the lobby, the elderly receptionist looked at Clara with eyes full of pity. She didn't need to ask. Clara understood with just a glance. "Room 214, the woman whispered, her hand trembling as she slid over the key. Mary grabbed her daughter's arm. "Clara, you don't have to do this. Maybe you'll regret seeing what you don't want to see." Clara shook her head. Tears streamed, but her voice was steel. "No, Mom, I need the truth, no matter how brutal it is." The hallway stretched, long and suffocating, its red carpet and dim yellow lights like a tunnel into some abyss. Every step Clara took echoed with dreadful weight. She clutched the key, feeling her entire life hinge on what lay ahead. At the wooden door marked 214, she froze. Muffled sounds seeped through the rustle of fabric, the shift of bodies. Her whole being went numb, her heart stilled. Matthew leaned close. "Clara, let me open it." "No," she cut him off, lifting her chin. "This is my marriage, my life. I'll open it myself." The keys slid in, a soft click. Clara drew a long breath, then pushed. Dim light spilled through the curtains. The room was a mess's suit jacket on the floor, a pair of heels discarded nearby, and on the bed, two bodies entwined. Ethan, Vanessa. In a single searing instant, Clara's entire world collapsed. The door burst open, its hinges screeching as though tearing the silence apart. For one suspended moment, time itself froze. Clara stood frozen on the threshold, her body trembling violently. Yet her eyes locked onto the scene before her, Ethan his. Shirt wrinkled, one arm draped across Vanessa's bare back. The bedsheet tangled loosely around them, exposing the brutal truth. Vanessa's long black hair spilled across the pillow, mingling with Ethan's broad shoulder, as if they had belonged to each other all along. Clara's breath shattered in her chest. Air drained from her lungs, leaving only a hollow abyss. Behind her, Mary clutched her chest with a strangled sob. Matthew cursed, fists coiled tight, while Paul gripped his daughter's shoulders as if to keep her from collapsing. A jagged sound escaped Clara's throat, part broken laugh, part stifled cry. She stepped inside, each stride as if walking barefoot across shards of glass. Ethan jerked awake, his face draining of color at the sight of his bride, in her wedding gown, staring at him with eyes ablaze. "Clara, I can explain." "Explain?" Clara's voice was so cold it startled even herself. "What exactly do you plan to explain?" "That on our wedding day, you chose to be here with my maid of honor." Vanessa bolted upright, yanking the sheet to her chest. Her once proud face twisted in panic. "Clara, please listen to me. It's not what it looks like." Clara cut her off with a roar that shook the walls. "Not what it looks like? I walked in and found the two of you in bed on my wedding day, and you dare say it's not what it looks like?" The room fell into a suffocating silence. Only the relentless tick of the wall clock filled the air. Stabbing at Clara's mind like mockery, she turned to glance at her family, her father's blazing fury, her mother's tears, her brother's burning rage before facing Ethan and Vanessa again. The two people she had trusted most. Clara inhaled sharply, her voice steady and sharp as a blade. "Everyone will know, not just Mitha. Entire world will know what you've done." Ethan leaped from the bed, scrambling for his clothes. "Clara, don't make a spectacle of this in front of everyone. We can talk about it privately. I beg you, privately." Clara let out a laugh, brittle and cutting, like glass splintering. "You destroyed me publicly, and now you want to save face. No, Ethan. From this moment on, your mask falls." Vanessa burst into tears, reaching out, but Matthew shoved her hand away. "Don't touch my sister." The air thickened like a storm about to break. Clara turned sharply, pulling her phone from the pocket sewn into her wedding gown. Her fingers shook, but she dialed with ruthless speed. "Linda? It's Clara. Call everyone, the Harrington family, the organizers, our friends. Tell them to come to room 214 immediately. There's something they need to witness with their own eyes." Ethan lunged, desperate to snatch the phone, but Paul stepped between them, his voice a guttural growl. "Enough, Ethan. You've betrayed my daughter, and now you'd silence her too." Ethan froze, eyes locked on Clara. The tender gaze of a fiancé was gone, replaced by raw, naked panic. "You'll ruin me and yourself." "No," Clara replied, her voice hard as steel. "I ruin nothing. You've done this yourselves. I'm only revealing the truth." The door stood wide open, and Clara in her white gown became a living verdict. She was no longer the naive dreamer. She was the woman pierced straight through the heart, and from that wound, a merciless fire now burned. A wedding day meant to be a beginning had transformed into a trial, and Clara had chosen to be the judge. A pounding knock rattled the door. The first guests had arrived, their faces caught between confusion and curiosity at being summoned to a hotel room instead of waiting at the altar. Clara stood at the center of the room, spine straight, eyes dry and burning. Her white gown spilled across the gray carpet, a blinding slash of purity against the sordid backdrop. Ethan had scrambled into his shirt, only half the buttons fastened. Vanessa clutched the sheet around her body, her once proud face washed pale. They stared at each other like cornered animals. The door swung open. Mrs. Harrington entered first, followed by Mr. Harrington, Ethan's younger sister Katie, and the best man, Tom. Their expressions shifted from confusion to devastation as their eyes swept across the rumpled bed, the discarded clothes, and Ethan and Vanessa's disgraceful state. "Oh, God," Mrs. Harrington gasped, clutching her chest. "Ethan, what have you done?" Silence pressed down, thick and unbearable. Clara raised her chin. Her voice rang out, not trembling, but sharp and metallic. "This is why the wedding cannot begin. My groom and my best friend chose to betray me on this very day." Katie's breath caught, her eyes shining with tears. "Brother, how could you?" Ethan staggered forward, reaching desperately toward Clara. "Clara, please. Don't turn this into a disaster. Let me explain just to you in private. We can still fix this." Clara jerked her hand away, her gaze like ice. "Fix this? After you lay in that bed with Vanessa while 100 guests waited below? After you stabbed through my trust and turned 20 years of friendship into a joke? What's left to fix, Ethan?" Vanessa collapsed to her knees, clutching Clara's gown, sobbing. "Clara, I'm sorry I lost control. I swear I still love you. I still care." Clara bent slightly, her eyes drilling into Vanessa's tear-streaked face. Her words landed like hammer blows. "Love, friendship. A friend doesn't lie in bed with my fiancé. A friend doesn't deceive me for months, then smile while I step into a wedding gown. Vanessa, you are no friend. You're a stain." Behind them, Matthew lunged, fist raised to strike Ethan, but Paul caught his son's shoulder firmly. "No, let her handle this her way." Clara turned, facing every pair of eyes, the Harringtons, her own family, the friends crowding into the hall, peering in through the open doorway. The golden light above cast her face in sharp relief, her eyes glinting like shattered glass. "Everyone deserves to know the truth," Clara declared. "There is no delay, no groom who simply lost his way. There is only betrayal. And I will not cover it up. We are going back to the altar. I will tell every single guest exactly what has happened." Mrs. Harrington collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Clara, if you do this, you'll destroy the honor of our entire family. Clara's hands clenched into fists, her voice cutting with resolve. I'm not the one who destroyed it. Your son and the woman I once called my friend tore it apart themselves. I will not carry their sins. Not today, not ever. Ethan stumbled closer, his voice cracking, desperate. Clara, I beg you, if you say this out loud, everything ends: my career, my family, all of it. You'll drag us all into ruin. Clara lifted her head high. In her eyes, the naive bride was gone. What remained was a blaze of fire. No, Ethan, you dragged me into ruin. Today, I'll drag everything into the light so everyone sees. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Every breath was heavy. Then Clara turned, the hem of her white gown sweeping across the carpet, leaving behind two broken figures, melting like wax statues. The march was about to begin, not a wedding, but a public trial. And Clara had chosen. She would be the one holding the microphone. The gentle music that had once awaited the wedding had long since gone silent. Down in the garden of Riverside Manor, more than 100 guests sat uneasily on white chairs, murmurs swelling into waves. Some thought the bride was nervous. Others suspected the groom had been delayed by traffic. None imagined that only a few blocks away, in a hotel room, the truth had detonated like a bomb. And now? Clara carried that bomb back with her. She stepped from the car, her gown trailing behind her, not with the innocence of a radiant bride, but with the steel poise of a woman hardened by betrayal. Her face was stone, her eyes blazing. Behind her walked the Reynolds family, the Harringtons' best man, Tom, and Ethan's sister, Katie, each silent, unwilling to speak. Ethan and Vanessa followed at the rear, their heads bowed, as though ducking from the storm that was about to strike. Linda, the frantic event manager, rushed forward. Clara, thank God you're here. Everyone's waiting. I don't know what to tell them. You don't need to. Clara cut her off, her voice low but resolute. I'll speak. The buzz of whispers surged as Clara strode to the altar minutes ago. She was meant to walk on her father's arm toward the groom. Now, Ethan lingered off to the side, his hands clenched, sweat glistening on his brow, while Vanessa clutched her shawl-like armor, her face chalk white. Clara lifted the microphone. The sound reverberated through the garden, silencing the crowd. Hundreds of eyes fixed on her. Thank you all for being here today, Clara began, her voice calm, unnervingly so. I know you came to witness a wedding, but I'm sorry, there will be no wedding. Gasps rippled through the audience. Clara drew in a steady breath and continued. The reason is not that I changed my mind, and it's not some accident. The reason is because, while I waited at the altar, my groom Ethan Harrington was in a hotel bed with my maid of honor and my supposed best friend, Vanessa Brooks. Cries erupted, shocked exclamations, gasps of, "Oh my God!" A few guests clapped hands over their mouths. Katie broke down in tears. Mrs. Harrington collapsed into a chair. Mr. Harrington pressed a hand to his brow. Age and shame etched across his face in an instant. Clara turned, her voice clear and sharp as a blade. Do you want to deny it, Ethan? Or shall I describe exactly what I saw? Ethan's lips moved, trembling, but under the blaze of hundreds of eyes, no words came. Vanessa bowed her head, tears falling freely, unable to utter a defense. Clara faced the crowd once more. A summer breeze swept her hair and gown, yet she stood tall, defiant as a warrior. You came to bless a love story. So see clearly what it looks like when love is betrayed and corrupted. I will not walk into a marriage only to play the fool. I choose truth even, if it is merciless. The garden erupted into chaos, some shouting shame on you, others cursing Ethan, others casting Vanessa looks of pure contempt. Local photographers' cameras flashed. The murmur of scandal roared like a storm. Clara paused, slipped the engagement ring from her finger. She held it high, the diamond glinting in the light, once a symbol of eternal promise. This was once a symbol of trust. Now it's nothing more than proof of a lie. And with that, she turned and hurled the ring into the pond behind the altar. The faint plunk was small, yet sharp, cutting through the air like the closing of a door on every illusion. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then, from among the guests, applause rang out. A middle-aged woman stood, eyes blazing. "Well done, Clara. You deserve better." One clap became many, until thunderous applause rolled across the garden. Clara stood there, not weeping, gripping the microphone as waves of support surrounded her. Ethan's face darkened, his voice rising in desperation. "You don't understand. This is our private matter, not a spectacle." Matthew surged forward, pointing a furious finger. "No, this is the truth." "And you're the one who made it a spectacle, Ethan." Vanessa collapsed into sobs, crumpling into a chair, unable to raise her head. Clara lowered the microphone. Her voice was steady, resonant, echoing through the hushed crowd. "This wedding is over, but my life is not. I will not let two traitors define my worth. Today, I lost a fiancé and a friend. But I found myself again." Her words struck like a final blade, sealing the reckoning. Guests rose from their seats, rushing to Claire, embracing her, touching her arm, assuring her she was not alone. And Ethan and Vanessa, under the avalanche of whispers and condemning stares, could only bow their heads and slink away like the defeated. The wedding had become a public trial. And in that trial, Clara emerged victorious, not through tears, but through the sharp edge of truth and an unbreakable pride. When Ethan and Vanessa slunk away, the garden of Riverside Manor erupted into a chaos unlike anything it had ever seen. Gone were the sweet melodies of wedding music, gone the polished words of blessing. In their place rose a storm of applause, cheers, and outrage. Some guests stood outright, pointing furious fingers at the two betrayers as they left. Unable to conceal their disgust, Clara remained on the altar, the microphone dangling loosely from her hand. In her white wedding gown stripped of every illusion of love, she radiated a presence that made people fall silent. She was no longer the bride, no longer the victim, but the living witness of a painful truth and the one holding power in her hands. For a heartbeat, silence hung. Then a voice rang out from the musician's corner. "The bride is right. If there's no wedding, then let's turn today into a party of freedom." Applause broke out, scattered at first, then building into a tidal wave. A violinist seized the moment, bowing his strings, and the first bold notes of "I Will Survive" soared through the summer air. Clara froze, then laughed. Sound sharp, yet freeing. The suffocating tension began to dissolve, replaced by a strange exhilaration. Guests stood, glasses of champagne raised high. A toast to Clara, a toast to the truth. Voices shouted. Matthew bounded up to the altar, snatching the microphone, his voice gleeful and unrestrained. "Ladies and gentlemen, I hereby declare, this is no longer the Harrington-Reynolds wedding. This is officially the biggest party Millbrook has ever seen. Clara's great escape party." The crowd roared with laughter and clapping. Clara covered her face, part embarrassed, part relieved, though a crushing weight had been lifted. The band struck up in earnest. The wedding cake was not left behind, but sliced and served to the guests. Tables glittered with champagne, seafood, roasted meats, fruit platters, all of it prepared to celebrate a couple, now transformed into a feast for those who had witnessed the town's most explosive unmasking. "I've never seen a wedding turn into a festival," a middle-aged woman whispered to her friend. "But I swear I've never seen Clara look more beautiful or powerful." In a corner, Paul Reynolds squeezed. His wife's hand, his voice raw with emotion. "She truly is our daughter. She won't let herself break." Mary nodded, tears streaming but no longer of grief. They were tears of pride. Clara moved among the crowd, embraced again and again. Hands squeezing hers, voices praising her. Her old elementary teacher clasped her palm firmly. "Clara, today you taught this town the meaning of self-respect." A college friend lifted his glass. "Congratulations, Clara. You dodged the biggest bullet of your life." And slowly, bitterness gave way to something new, freedom. No wedding to bind her, no false promise pressing on her chest, no looming Harrington shadow blotting her sky. She was still Clara Reynolds, untouched, unbroken, stronger than ever. In the midst of music and revelry, Katie Ethan's younger sister approached. Her eyes were red, her face stricken with shame for sharing blood with a traitor. She reached out, trembling, to grasp Clara's hand. "Clara, I knew nothing. If I had, I would have told you." "I'm so sorry for everything my brother has done," Clara squeezed her hand gently, shaking her head. "Katie, you're not at fault. We were all deceived. What matters is that you had the courage to stand on the side of truth." Katie broke down, clinging to Clara like a sister. Around them, many eyes glistened with tears. The celebration lasted into the night. No one left early, unwilling to miss the transformation taking place before them. A bride abandoned, lifted up as an emblem instead. From disaster, June 15th had become the day Millbrook would never forget, the day Clara Reynolds chose herself and was exalted by an entire community at sunset. As crimson light painted the sky, Clara sat alone by the pond where her diamond ring had sunk. She exhaled, but her chest no longer felt heavy. Matthew came and sat beside her, a beer in hand. "You know," he said, half teasing, half proud, "this is the first wedding I've ever seen where the groom fled and the bride was hailed as a hero." Clara laughed, truly laughed, for the first time that day. Maybe it wasn't the wedding of my life, but it was definitely the most important day of my life. Matthew clinked his beer against her glass of water. To Clara, the strongest woman in Millbrook. Clara gazed at the pond where the last rays of sun sparkled on the surface. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time, she felt no fear. 3 months after that explosive day, Millbrook still hadn't stopped talking. Whenever Clara walked into a cafe or strolled past the market, whispers trailed behind her, followed by admiring smiles. "That's the bride who turned her wedding into a day of truth." Those whispers, instead of shaming her, became her armor. In the eyes of the town, she was no longer a victim. She was no longer a victim. She was stood tall in the face of devastation. After the scandal, Clara moved out of the apartment she once shared with Ethan and rented a small place near the hospital. It wasn't large, just 1 bedroom and a balcony overlooking the park, but for Clara, it was the beginning of a new chapter. In the mornings, she brewed coffee and stood on the balcony, watching the sunrise, letting the cool wind weave through her hair. Every breath felt lighter than the suffocating days of living under lies. Her work at the hospital became her anchor. Clara threw herself into every shift, every fragile child who needed her care. Her colleagues began to look at her differently. Not only as a dedicated nurse, but as a woman who had survived a collapse that might have broken anyone else. One day, the head physician rested a hand on her shoulder and said quietly, "Clara, you don't just heal patients, you inspire us. I'm going to nominate you for the new coordinator position." Clara was stunned. She had never imagined her private heartbreak could transform into strength that carried her forward. Outside of work, she began doing things she had never dared before, setting aside time for herself. Clara enrolled in an evening art class, sometimes went hiking with old friends, and often volunteered at the orphanage, reading stories to children. Their innocent laughter reminded her that happiness wasn't contained in a wedding dress. was in the small moments that filled a heart to the brim. Vanessa once tried to reach out. A single message, "Clara, I'm sorry. I've lost everything. Please forgive me." Clara read it, but didn't respond. Forgiveness or not, no longer mattered. The friend who had once laughed and cried beside her had died the day she stood. In a hotel blanket, trembling with guilt, Ethan had vanished from Millbrook. Rumor said his family sent him to Europe to escape the scandal. Clara didn't care. In her mind, he was nothing but a shadower, costly lesson etched deep into her soul. Never entrust your life to someone who doesn't know its worth. One evening, after her shift, Clara stopped by her favorite cafe. David Miller, young doctor, who had recently joined her department and often came by as well, walked in. They had exchanged casual words at the hospital, but that night David smiled and sat across from her. "I've heard a lot about you," he said, "but I'd rather hear who Clara thinks she is, not just what others say." Clara blinked in surprise, then smiled. It had been so long since she saw eyes that held no pity, no judgment, only sincerity. They talked for 2 hours about the hospital, the children, their favorite books. For the first time since everything, Clara laughed freely without the weight pressing down. That night, back at her apartment, Clara stood before the mirror. The woman staring back was no longer the bride who had hurled her ring into the pond. Her eyes carried calmness, her lips curved with quiet confidence. She had walked through pain, through betrayal, and now stood stronger. Clara Talla knew the road ahead was still long, but this time she would walk it on her own feet, with no need for a perfect groom to lean on. And if someone worthy appeared, he would have to walk beside her, never leading her with lies. Outside, the Millbrook night was hushed, wind whispering through the trees. Clara closed her eyes, whispering to herself, "The day I lost a wedding was the day I was reborn." A year had passed since the wedding that never was, and Millbrook no longer spoke Clara's name in hushed gossip. Instead, they called her the youngest head nurse in the hospital. The title carried weight, not just with overnight shifts and the sparkle in children's eyes when she comforted them, but with colleagues who had come to trust her. Clara had gone from a woman who seemed to lose everything to one who stood firmly in charge of herself. In her small apartment, Clara hung a special frame, not an expensive artwork, but a painting she had made herself in her evening art class. A woman standing in a field of flowers, her face turned toward the sun. Beneath it, in shaky handwriting, Clara had written, "Happiness is not given, happiness is chosen." Each morning she looked at it and reminded herself she had chosen to live, to love, to move forward. David Miller, the young doctor who had once accidentally shared a cafe table with her, had now become a familiar presence in her life. At first, they were colleagues trading notes on cases, friends talking about medicine and books. But slowly, through afternoon walks in the park and moments spent escorting little patients into the sunlight, the distance between them dissolved. Clara realized that real love wasn't loud. It didn't need grand proposals or flowery vows. It lived in the way David waited outside the hospital after her late shifts, holding a cup of hot tea. It whispered in the short texts, "Did you sleep? If you're tired, let me cover your shift." Small gestures, but enough to warm entire days. One late summer afternoon, David brought Clara to a hill outside Millbrook. The wind rushed over the crest, the town a tiny patchwork below. He spread a blanket and opened a simple picnic basket. No candles, no Winja sandwiches, fresh strawberries, and a notebook. "Clara," he said softly, his eyes steady on hers, "I can't promise you a life of luxury, but I promise that whenever you fall, I'll be there to catch you. You can choose to keep walking alone," or he handed her the notebook. On the first page, in his handwriting, were the words, "Chapter 2, Together." Clara smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek, but her heart calm at last. For so long she had feared that loving again would mean another wound. But looking at David, she knew. Not every man was Ethan. Not every love was a lie. I choose, she whispered. Together. They sat there until sunset washed the sky in gold. No applause, no wedding dress, but for Clara. It was the most sacred moment of her life. Months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Clara and David held a small ceremony. Not in a grand cathedral, but in the hospital garden where they had spent nights fighting for children's lives. Colleagues, a handful of friends, and children from the ward bustled about, bringing wildflower crowns as gifts. A little girl tugged Clara's hand and whispered, "Miss Clara, today you really do look like a princess." Clara laughed. She had never worn a sparkling white gown, but that day, in her simple cream dress and flower crown, she felt freer than ever. David clasped her hands, his voice thick with emotion. "I've seen so much pain within these hospital walls, but because of it, I've found you. Thank you for letting me love and be loved." Applause followed, not thunderous, but warm, sincere. Clara looked around, familiar faces, people she had shared tears and triumphs with. This was her real family. That night, Clara returned to the apartment, now their home. She gazed at the painting of the woman in the field of flowers. Now she knew that woman was herself, not turning away from the sun, but walking boldly toward the light. Clara closed her eyes and whispered, "The day I lost a wedding was the day I found true happiness." And this time, it wasn't a false beginning, it was one chosen. From the heart, as the velvet curtain falls, we realize that a wedding is not the measure of love, nor the key to happiness. For Clara, the moment she let go of her unfinished wedding gown was the very moment she found herself again strong, proud, and unafraid of any betrayal. Her wedding day became a day of ruin. Yet from those ashes she rose, a living proof that sometimes losing a false love is the very gift that allows you to rediscover your true worth. Thank you for staying with Snail's story until the very end. If today's story made you reflect on the difficult choices in your own life, leave us a comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so each week we can journey together through stories full of meaning.